There are a lot more opportunities out there for cis hetero people, especially white people, like people that are well off, that just have a bunch of different sorts of privileges. And so we're trying to support people that are less privileged, whether it be socially, economically, politically. And that feeds into us trying to book exclusively queer people. We try to book people of color.
HedoniQue stands for hedonistic and queer.
We're HedoniQue. I'm Andrew.
I'm Doug.
And I'm Ethan.
I'm Andrew Stark. I'm part of the HedoniQue DJ collective here in Bloomington, Indiana. We're like a queer, pretty political DJ group. We focus mostly on techno, house, and club music. It really emerged from what I felt like was a lack of social opportunities for queer people and people that like more underground sounds. It's creating a safe space for queer people to connect with other queer people, which there aren't very many of in Bloomington, and most of them are 21 plus. Also, initially, we wanted to have it be a fundraising opportunity for local community organizations and nonprofits that are progressive and match our politics. But more recently, we've just been paying artists who have been performing, and some of them have been coming from out of Bloomington to perform.
So Miss Twink is a DJ from Chicago that we booked. She's part of the circle of club DJs in Chicago. LXS is a producer from Pittsburgh who's played at a party called Hot Mass before. She actually opened up for an Indiana DJ there named Non-Compliant, and she like produces a ton. The other groups that are booking shows in Bloomington tend to book cis white men. And I think for us it's important that we like highlight people who don't fall into that category necessarily. DJs will book their friends, and their friends tend to be like cis white men. When you have the attitude of, I'm gonna book my friends, you tend to get caught in that trap and you don't look outside of it. And I think that's problematic for sure. We need to be more conscious. Even if you are like a cis white man, I think you sort of, like, booking is political. And if your attitude is, I'm only gonna book my friends, then that becomes sort of a trap that leads to booking people who are like you, and not like being proactive about finding people who aren't like you makes both the music boring, but also like the people who are represented. And right now Duck is about to get in the mix.
I am like gender non-binary, and I kind of have felt like it my whole life. I don't know, I would always play with like the stereotypically like boys' toys when I was a kid. I don't know, I've always dressed not super femme. I don't have like a super detailed realization coming out story because it had been a part of myself my whole life. Learning about all of the possible like identities, I was like, this is the one that I feel most in line with.
I actually was the original coordinator of the office when it opened in 1994. I don't know a lot about the music scene, or at least the current music scene or the younger music scene, but I know how powerful music is as a force. I just thought about that in terms of the March for Our Lives event in Washington, where, you know, some of the singers just brought the crowd to their feet. Music is always a part of change and culture. That's one of the ways oppressed groups deal with cultural oppression.
We are trying to make a space that feels safe and feels empowering for people that are historically marginalized.
What is really nice about like HedoniQue is that it kind of like exists in this place where it shouldn't. Like, there's not like a lot of options for like the gay scene around, especially at a lot of the other house parties that I go to in like the Bloomington area. There's this expectation that I'll turn it down a little bit, that I'll act more straight, or I'll act more, or I guess just like less gay. It's the thing that I've always appreciated about HedoniQue is that it's sort of like it wants you to like amp it up, like, you know, go a little crazy and like not be ashamed for being gay. Like, that's cool. Those parties, like, they're all about people that are queer enjoying their queerness and kind of like reveling in it.
I wandered into the back door last evening where there was a queer art show, and there was an energy there that was really important. I think it might have to do with the fact that we all look for sacred spaces, and I'm moving now into a whole other venue, or I'm not even sure how to express it, but I think we all have a need to be in a place that affirms and honors who we are. For some people, that's a sanctuary, that's a church, it's a mosque or whatever. For other people, it's a bar or a center like this, or a place where, you know, they feel their being is somehow honored. And so I think there'll always be a need for that. I think all of us value even our own personal space, a space that makes us feel affirmed, feel at peace, feel connected.
So that night, they were hanging out outside on the porch, I think, and some two dudes came up to them, and I think they were with someone, hanging out with a friend or something, and these dudes just like kept like taking photos or something in front of them, and then one of them like turned around and like just basically like grabbed them like on their like upper thigh, like right around this area, and was just really rude and inappropriate with how they reacted to it. And like, I think I remember them saying that they repeatedly asked them to like stop and like to respect them and like stop misgendering them, stop touching them, and the guy was literally just like, I don't really care, like that doesn't affect me.
Psychology-based algorithms as part of their matchmaking process. Because people don't have any sort of nuance, because we aren't taught, like as a child, oh, you can be a girl or a boy or something in between, people have a very hard time of making sense of it. People are walking down the street and you and your friends are going, is that a boy or a girl? And you spend the entire time you're walking down the street trying to figure it out because you don't know how to make sense of uncertainty. And because we aren't taught that being however you want to be as a human being is okay, then people feel the need to attack people who don't adhere to norms.
It was an assault, and it was also just a lack of awareness and like ignorance and thinking that because you're gay, you have like this base of knowledge that, or I guess more like a clear pass to just do whatever the fuck you want and treat people however the fuck you want. And that's like, I think, one of the biggest problems in the queer community. That type of person can just be incredibly kind of presumptuous because they do have their male privilege, but they also have this like angst of being like gay on top of it.
The culture of like masculinity, feeling like they can just like approach femininity in any way that is not in regard to like their comfort or their like, you know, like consent.
The electronic music scene, obviously you find yourself sometimes in tight spaces, sometimes it's really, really hot. You know, people are dressed sometimes in as little as they can just because they know how hot it's going to be and they want to stay as cool as possible. I feel like people can definitely do things and think that they're going to go unnoticed. And when that's the case, just try to, I guess, read the body language of people.
I've definitely had a lot of friends at parties that have been like touched unwantingly or just put in a variety of situations that they like did not want to be in and had to like consequently end their night really early and like leave and be super like upset and like, you know, someone like took their good night from them, you know?
It's intended to train DJs on how to intervene in situations that sometimes might be unnoticed by everyone else, but the DJs kind of have a one-up typically because they tend to be rised above. So the Bloomington DJ Alliance, yeah, they're showing us ways to prevent that, whether it's from talking to bar staff, having signals for certain people to, you know, signal them over if you see something that shouldn't be going on. ways to potentially, if you need to, get on the microphone and potentially say something, knowing how to judge the severity of a situation.
A lot of people feel the need to have stereotypes about people of color, and a lot of times it comes out as like food. I don't know what you would call it. They become food groups. And so, like, for example, one really popular saying at the moment is, "Ooh, he looks like a snack," or "She looks like a whole dinner." And so people are now starting being compared, their body parts specifically are starting being compared to food. And so one of the things that I really hate is when people go, "Oh man, you're my favorite chocolate drop," or "Oh, you look like a slice of cake." And so when you are a person of color, you would think that within a queer space you would be really safe, because we all understand that we're being persecuted because we're queer, or we're not being adequately understood because we're queer. But racism doesn't disappear. A lot of queer settings are set up with them in mind. They also tend to have the power over other people because they have the neighborhoods, for example. So when you think about Boys Town, you can think about, oh yeah, this is where the gay people are. But if we want to be real, it's usually like white gay men who are middle to upper class that can afford to live in these areas, because Boys Towns are starting to be gentrified in different ways, and they're starting to push out all of the lower class people who live there.
There's always conflict, and there are always people who feel, oh, your rights are being honored, mine are not. And so I think it's an ongoing battle to honor you. We spoke earlier about the fact that there are racists in the gay community, and there are homophobes in various racial groups, and we all need to be on guard about who are we oppressing, who are we leaving out of the picture. Yes, people who are asexual or pansexual are speaking up.